All right, I think we're ready to jump into our third page here, the payment page. But before we do that, let's take another quick look at our sketch here. So this is the payment page. It's pretty simple. It just has a title here. And then we have the credit card where the user can input their credit card number and all the other info here. And then they can add the card from here and then go to the next page. It looks pretty straightforward. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm trying to design a new project or a new page, it's a little bit hard to know exactly what we want to put on there, or to even get some inspiration for our project and our own designs. Of course, we can use similar apps that we're designing and play around with those apps, but that can be really tedious. So that's why I'm going to show you this cool website here called Patterns. You can head on over to ptrns.com to access it, and it's super cool. Essentially, it's just kind of like Pinterest but for app design. So it shows you a lot of interesting inspirations that you can take from kind of some of the hot apps on the market. They even have categories here. So based on the page that you're designing, you can go in here and get inspiration. Let's go ahead and select this purchase tab here to see some inspiration from different apps and different companies. For example, there's Uber's payment page here. We already have a design in mind in terms of my own sketch here. But let's go ahead and see what we need. So we need a card number, we need an expiry date, a CVV, country and zip code. So I think generally these first three fields are required and the other ones are kind of optional. But of course, if the client wants us, we can definitely put those in our design in the future as well. But for now, let's focus on just putting these three required fields. So let's go back here to my payments page here in Figma. I'm going to use the text key and go ahead and just create some notes here. So payment requirements. Let's go ahead and use left align and just move that here. So we need the credit card number here. We need the CVV and then expiry date. This is a good way to make notes and remember to add things to your page here. So let's go ahead and select our frame here, and then first we want text in here. So let's do text, and then let's do add payment. Let's go ahead and select font size of 26, and then just go ahead and move that up here. You want to do 50. I think that looks good for now. Let's just zoom in here and create a rectangle for our credit card. And I think that's good here. I want to maintain a spacing of 40 from each side, or let's actually do 43. Expand that here to maybe 185. Let's go ahead and set a nice gradient fill. Let's do linear for the background here, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this up a little bit here first. Let's choose local colors. So that's the colors that we're using in our project here. Let's do this one for the top, and then the same thing for the bottom, but we'll do a little bit darker maybe. And then we'll have it start from here to maybe here. Let's go ahead and close that up here. And let's go ahead and round the borders to maybe 18 here. I think that looks good. Why don't we go ahead and just center this text here? I think that looks good. Create another text. And let's just go ahead and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 space 5, 6, 7, 8 space 9, 0, 1, 2 space 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm just repeating some numbers here. I'm gonna add some double spaces in here instead of just one space, just to add some spacing between these every 4 digits. Let's go ahead and select the whole text field and change the fill to white. And then let's move it over here. Let's go ahead and make it bold and change the font size to 16. Do a spacing of 30 would be good. Let's try 18 for the font size. That's even better. Move it up a little bit. Let's actually go over here to letter spacing and add a letter spacing of, let's do 2%. That looks good. That just adds a little bit of spacing between each one of my digits here. I'm going to use Command D to duplicate that here. And then what do we want next? We want the expiry date. So let's do month, year, just as a placeholder here. And move that down here. And then let's just go ahead and duplicate this here and do CVV. Just move it all the way to the right. I think that's starting to come together. Just going to move it around a little bit. Move these up a little bit. I think that looks good. I have a feeling blue would look better for the gradient here. So why don't we go ahead and actually change our colors from the orange to blue. Remember, you can always do this with your design. There's really no right or wrong here. It's just really a matter of what looks better to you. So go ahead and experiment with different options. You don't have to stick to the ones that we're working with here. If you want to use another type of page, by all means, go ahead and do that. Now let's go ahead and just select everything here and use Command G to group them. Rename this to credit card. And let's go ahead to the effects panel here and add an effect of drop shadow. And for this one, I want to do maybe a Y of 5. Let's do a blur of 10. Let's try 12. Do an opacity of 20% so it's not too visible. Let's go ahead and add another shadow as well. Let's do a blur of 20 here and a Y of 8. And then change the opacity to maybe 15% or actually 5% here. Let's try 8%. I think that looks good. So we're just missing a button here. So as you remember, we created our buttons as a component, but we placed it in another page here in the components page. You don't actually have to go there to access it. If you go to the assets tab over here, you'll see all your components here. And I have my buttons as well, both the disabled version and the enabled one. So why don't we just use the enabled one here for now. And it just beautifully pops into place here. Let's make sure it's aligned in the center. Let's go ahead and also make sure everything else is aligned in the center as well. And it looks like it is. Let's change this button text to add card. And let's just change this to payment here to make it a little bit more simple. And then, of course, let's go ahead and center it. I think that looks pretty good. So there we have it. That's our payment page. We can definitely come back later and then polish things up here once we're done with everything else.